Namaskar viewers, hello and welcome to Sansad TV. I am Teena Jha, you're watching Perspective. The last known member of an indigenous tribe in the Amazon rainforest has died after living alone for decades. The unidentified man from an uncontacted indigenous tribe in Brazil was known as the man of the hole because he was often spotted taking shelter in pits dug in the ground. Now, his death has resulted in a lot of discussion among activists, once again bringing to spotlight the need to protect the indigenous people worldwide. In India, most of the tribes are collectively identified under Article 342 as scheduled tribes. There are about 110 million tribals in the country, distributed across 18 states. The tribal population is known to live sustainable lives in harmony with nature. However, with their numbers dwindling due to various contributing factors, the concern is on how not just to protect their population, but also preserve their heritage, culture, language, art, traditions, and also, most importantly, their sensibilities. So what's being done towards protection and economic upliftment of the tribals in India? How are their concerns and challenges being addressed? This and much more in Perspective today with an eminent panel of experts. So let me begin by introducing them to you. Professor P.C. Joshi, Social Anthropology and former Pro VC, Delhi University. Professor S.K. Chaudhury, Department of Sociology, University of Lucknow. And Dr. S.K. Singh, Professor and Head, Department of Survey, Research and Data Analytics, International Institute for Population Sciences, Mumbai. Thank you, gentlemen, for joining me on this edition of Perspective today. Professor Joshi, allow me to begin the program today with you on the renewed concerns globally on the dwindling population of the indigenous people, which is now also resulting in various communities being wiped out from the face of the earth.
Yes, I think it's a matter of great concern for the world community. And as you rightly said, the world community is also aware of this concern. And we are now from 2022 entering into the International UN Decade for Indigenous Languages. We know how precious these languages are. And as far as India is concerned, I think Government of India is very, very concerned about these issues. We have in the past, if I may give you an example of so-called Great Andamanis, who were actually not one community, but there are 15 different tribes having their distinct languages, their distinct cultures. They have all gone, and now we just do not have any trace of it. In India at present, as per one estimate, there are nearly 197 languages which are endangered because there are less number of people who are speaking and there are dominating cultures surrounding them. And these are the two very important reasons why these languages are endangered. Most of these 197 languages are languages spoken by the scheduled tribes of India. And therefore, I think it is a matter of great concern for us that we must preserve these languages because language is the soul of culture. So if the language is gone, the culture is gone. So therefore, and this culture contains a lot of precious indigenous knowledge, a lot of wisdom that they have accumulated over generations. So it is not only important for them, it is also important for the humanity at large that the languages are preserved, the culture is preserved. And I think Government of India is doing a lot for that. And especially I would like to mention the National Education Policy 2020, where this mother tongue is given special emphasis. And I think we are on the right path of preserving, protecting, and conserving languages, especially of the endangered tribes in India.
Certainly, Professor Joshi. So apart from that, what exactly are we doing in terms of ensuring their economic upliftment, also their inclusion into the mainstream is something that I'll come back to you and understand. But let me go across to Professor Chaudhury and understand from him, let's first look at the global perspective, Professor Chaudhury. About 5% of the population belongs to, the indigenous population globally. But 15 to 20% of the world's most poor also happen to be the indigenous people. What does that say about the state of the indigenous peoples globally?
Yes. What I'm trying to say is that we have to go into the history of the whole thing. But what happened in this Brazilian indigenous person who passed away? What has happened is that whatever population they had, data shows that they were all massacred sometime in 1970s. Why they have been massacred is a question, important question. I met some Australian, a close kin of mine, who is these days in India with me here in Lucknow. I was interacting with them. What is the opinion? He is a business executive, okay? What is the opinion about the indigenous community of Australia? Okay, first-hand information. What is the? No, it's very dangerous, and if we go for a trip there, pleasure trip, or for a tourist purpose, very difficult, almost like criminals. These kind of why this notion is there. This notion was also there during the British era in India. This is one. Two, why these indigenous communities, for example, in Andamanese, we are saying they are about 30,000 years old. Okay. And Indian government never declared them as indigenous because Indian government is saying that all are indigenous.
Yes.
So to avoid the controversy, they have not declared them as indigenous. But we know they are indigenous people. As you said, there are about 705 indigenous communities which have been recognized as scheduled tribes in India. The global perspective is that why they were not given the right which they were supposed to be given. When 1993 was announced as the year of indigenous people, and then certain rights were given to them, why the successive governments from various countries have failed to provide them their rights. Rather, India is far better than this Brazil or Australia by giving them their rights. We have here tribes with the full identity assertion. They are doing it, and they are on path to a lot of autonomy, particularly here. We'll discuss about Andamanese tribe. Andaman, there are 6
Absolutely.
tribes. What is all happening
we'll come to the state of the the Indian tribal population.
The global perspective is this: they have not been given their rights, and they are being continuously exploited by probably the unaware governments and unaware citizens.
And I think perhaps the fact that, this incident in Brazil, the man in the hole, as he was referred to, lived in solitude for close to 3 decades, died in solitude, his community has vanished, and it's only after his death that there have been concerns about how this community is being ignored, is not being given their due rights, and it's a matter of grave concern for the global community. But before that, Professor Singh, let me come to you and understand the India perspective on the state of the tribal population here. Professor Chaudhury was saying, of course, we are far better when it comes to treating them, empowering them. If you look at the global picture and if you look at the India picture, there is a stark difference that you can see. But before we get into all of that, India perhaps has the second largest tribal population. Correct me if I'm wrong, but what is the kind of demographic dynamics of the tribal population in our country? First, if we could understand that, and then we can get into the individual communities and what is being done to empower them.
Thanks, Teena Ji. At the outset, I would like to call all viewers of this program Happy Ganesh Chaturthi, which is celebrated across the country today.
Thank you for joining us on this special day.
A very pertinent issue. India is not facing those problems which has been noticed in Brazil. Reason is that right from independence, share of tribal population in the country has continuously been increasing census by census. In 1951 census, about 6.2% of total country's population was the tribal population, which increased to 6.9% in 61, remained almost same in 71, and right now in the most recent census, we are approaching around 9% of total population. 9% of the total population of the country is tribal population. That is why there is no question of tribal population elimination at the national level. But 3 important features are emerging in tribal demography. Along with other socially deprived groups, female literacy in tribal population has continuously been increasing from one census to another census. And most recent census shows that in India, as against 73% of total literacy for the country as a whole, in population 6+, even in tribal also we are at 60%. 59% precisely speaking, roughly I am talking about 60%. If you are looking at sex ratio at birth, which is a combination of both fertility and mortality, that's one of the important marker of health scenario. Even people's perceptions, people cognitive development are related to this. Tribal sex ratio is 990 as against 943 for overall population. If you are talking in 0 to 6 population, at national level, it is 919, but in tribal population, it is 957. What I mean to communicate that most of indicators are quite favorable and indicating that our government efforts of Sabka Saath, Sabka Vikas, Sabka Prayas is coming true in most of development indicators. If you are looking at TFR, if you are looking at access of development programs, access to insurance coverage, access to Poshan Abhiyan to address malnutrition. Along with this, if you look at Mahila Sashakti whatever government is, whether it is Jandhan or JAM. JAM means Jandhan, Aadhaar and mobile. On all these indicators, tribal are coming forward. They are having a very good pace of development. That is why I am 100% confident that there is no question of vanishing tribal population, diminishing tribal population, but they are very well part of inclusive development, inclusive growth of the country.
Absolutely.
Another issue is this. Those who are primitive, our professor was talking about Andaman. Definitely, in Andaman, those tribes, our fruits of development are not reaching to those specific, whether it is Jarva, whether it is Sentinel tribes, their life needs to be changed and a specific strategy should be adopted for changing demography of those people. These are my thinking about overall tribal development, tribal population, and tribal growth.
Certainly, and these are important points, Dr. Singh, that you have raised in the sense that there are several efforts riding on the principle of Sabka Saath, Sabka Vishwas, Professor Joshi, that the government has undertaken to ensure economic upliftment and inclusion of the tribal population into the mainstream population. But there are certain primitive communities which perhaps which are not getting the fruit of all of these schemes. Help us and our viewers, understand perhaps the factors that are contributing towards these communities still remaining secluded from the mainstream. Do they not want to be part of it, or are we lagging behind in some kind of efforts towards reaching them and winning their confidence?
Yeah, let me begin by saying that this term primitive should never be used with respect to indigenous communities or Indian tribal societies. In fact, Government of India has changed it to particularly vulnerable.
Okay.
So this primitive is a misnomer. It should not be used. It is a derogatory term. This is one thing. Secondly, I would like to say, emphasize very importantly why the knowledge and culture and language of these scheduled tribe communities are important, not only for them, but I'm telling you for the global community, because 80% of the biodiversity of the world is located in the community, in the areas of indigenous people. And in India also, it is again, the same kind of proportion is there. So most of the knowledge about the flora, fauna, medicines, food, because tomorrow, suppose this food vanishes or there is something wrong with it, we are looking for alternative food, alternative medicine. Where would we get it? All this knowledge is located with these indigenous communities, these so-called particularly vulnerable communities, that is PVTCs. So now in India, like my friend Dr. Sukan Chaudhury said, that we have been doing very well. I think in India we have been doing very well, even with respect to not treating all the scheduled tribes as one. We have already created a 75 or 10% of the tribal people as particularly vulnerable tribal groups. And we are having special programs for them. We are having special programs of their protection. We are having special programs of finding out why they are not taking help of the modern facilities. And we are concentrated on making sure that they become part of mainstream. Slowly and steadily they are coming into. I would like to emphasize here one great institution that has come up in the state of Odisha. I must mention that. It is called Kalinga Institute of Social Sciences. It is the only university in the world especially meant for the scheduled tribe communities and especially for protection of their culture and their languages. I think this is a great experiment that is going on in India. Like this, in many other states also, such initiatives are taken by government and as well as by the non-government organizations. I think we have had a last 75 years of very, very concentrated, very, very targeted approach towards making sure that these tribal communities become part of mainstream, take the benefits. At the same time, we are very much concerned about their exploitation, their suppression.
Absolutely.
So we are bringing them in mainstream. I think the great point of that is that we have got now the President of India, who is from Santhal community. I think this is the icing in the cake. This is really the fruit of the policies that we have been following for the last 75 years.
Absolutely.
And I think this is a matter of great celebration for all of us.
And that sends out a very, very empowering message to people of indigenous community worldwide. The fact that India, with the world's second largest tribal population, has somebody sitting at the highest constitutional post who belongs to this community. That in itself has a very, very positive message, Professor Chaudhury. But Professor Joshi spoke about vulnerable communities. The wider concern today, what we are discussing, is the fact that they are vanishing. These communities are vanishing, so we are unable to protect these communities and preserve their traditions, their heritage. So when we talk about the vulnerable communities in our country, apart from the welfare schemes, apart from the inclusion measures that we have undertaken, what exactly are we doing to protect these communities, to protect them from being, vanishing?
I'll touch 3 points here. First point is, you started with the issue of mainstream. To understand how tribals can be integrated in the mainstream, common man cannot understand it. Why should everyone look similar? Why should everyone look similar? One cannot be there in the mainstream. Number one. Number two, we try to distinguish a tribe on some 5 points. One is primitive trait, which is very derogatory. Professor Joshi said this. Mm-hmm. So now they have made it PVTG. Wonderful. Number two is distinctive culture. Every community has distinctive culture. I am from Odisha. I have a distinctive culture. And he is from Gond, or he is from Santal, or he is from Sentinelese. They have a distinctive culture. What is so great about it? Then number three, geographical isolation. There is no more geographical isolation now. Number four, shyness of contact with outsider, but anybody can have it. Shyness of contact with outsider, anybody can have it. These days, we cannot consider it as a criteria to distinguish a tribe. And number four is backwardness. Whole India is backward for that matter. If you say most of the communities in India are backward. What is the purchasing power? Less than $2 per day. So the point is, we have to rethink about what is a tribe. We got to have debate, and they should be taken at par with any other community, like Brahmins, like Shia Muslims, like Jains, like a tribe. Mm-hmm. This is my first honest, appeal. Okay. Number two, PBTG, Government of India is doing many things. Culturally relevant programs, need-based programs, they are doing it. But they are not able to succeed in certain cases. Let us go to Andaman now. There are 6 tribes, and you have heard about Alan Chow. John Alan Chow, a journalist, was killed sometime back in 2018. He was only 26 years old. He tried to lure the fishermen to take him to North Sentinelese Island. Sentinelese are about 100 people, and they have no contact with outsiders. They don't want to have contact. Why the population has gone down to 100 or 125? Because of some health problems, some nutrition problems. There are many problems. Suppose they are not doing this, they are not interested to be contacted by the tourists. Why should we do that? And this romanticization of tribal tourism is dangerous. And these tourist agencies in Andaman Islands are taking all these tourists for a ride. These kind of things should be stopped. Number three, coming to the third point, PBTG. What PBTG is a concept. It started from PTG, Primitive Tribal Group, 1975. About 75 tribals were declared as PTG by the government of India, other than ITDP and other projects. Now they have been called PBTG. They are trying their best, but the point is, there was a Khaka committee. The report came in 2014. What does Khaka committee pointed out? Health, education, and nutrition. These and administration, most important. These four things, the laws are wonderful, the clauses are wonderful, but implementation is yet to be wonderful.
Yes.
It is far from this thing satisfaction. Implementation part has to be definitely enhanced, so that participatory development has to be there. The tribals themselves should decide about what kind of planning, what kind of need-based program should be there for them.
Certainly. One related question. Let me go take across to Professor Singh. He spoke about how that there is a situation of irony, Professor Singh, today. The fact that the world today is aiming at achieving the Sustainable Development Goals. The aim is to leave no one behind. And the irony today that we are living in is every year we are celebrating the International Day for the Indigenous Peoples. We are having different activities worldwide, but we are leaving behind the very people who are known to lead sustainable lives, who perhaps live in harmony with nature and perhaps are the closest to nature. This is the biggest challenge for the world today, and perhaps for some communities even in India. Professor Singh.
Yeah, thank you, Teena Ji. You are absolutely right. India is either achieved or about to achieve a number of sustainable development goals, especially on population and health scenario. Today, if India has achieved below replacement level fertility in the country, which is the first step of population stabilization, because after dealing with population momentum for around 40 years from now, India's population will be stabilized. But in 2022, first time, recent National Family Health Survey has shown that India has reached replacement level fertility with TFR of 2.0. If we are looking by social group, you will find that tribals are not behind. Overall, TFR is 2.0. It means on an average, a woman in the country is producing 2 children in their entire reproductive life. For scheduled tribes and scheduled castes, both the value is 2.1. Other backward class, the value is 2.0. And those who are non-SC, ST, non-OBC, the value is 1.8. I mean to say that this most remarkable achievement of the country, achieved by the country, the contribution of scheduled tribes is also marvelous.
Yes.
Even in case of maternal health and child health, you will find that because of our flagship programs, even in tribal population, we are doing excellent on most of the indicators. If you are coming to pregnancy registration, it is 94% among tribes as against 96% in country as a whole. As per WHO recommendation for maternal health, 4+ ANC is required, which is 89% for country as a whole. For tribal population also, tribal women also, it is 82%.
Absolutely. Professor Joshi, so all of this data suggests, we've done marvelous work, but this is for those whose data can be measured. For communities who are beyond the government's reach, with whom we have no contact, and as Professor Chaudhury was saying, their numbers are coming down. So only about 100 of them left now among the Sentinelese community in Andaman. Can anything be done? If we cannot contact them, they do not want to be contacted. Can anything be done? Do we have a solution to ensure that this community does not vanish?
I would like to mention 2 points, Teena Ji, on this point. That this data on health and development, I am talking on the basis of recent government figures, which I have been one of the team of coordinators, National Family Health Survey 5. That is based on 724,115 women across the country. Out of them, 67,263, which is 9.2%, are scheduled tribes women. They are from even all 3 districts of Andaman also.
Okay.
That is why it is a purely representative sample. And based on that, I would like to suggest 4 major approaches. First, triangulation of our health intervention, especially Anemia Free India program, to address anemia among women, children, and adolescents in the country. On that front, tribals are slightly more disadvantaged.
Okay, Professor Singh, time is running out. Very quickly, I'll take one last comment from Professor Joshi. So, Professor Joshi, when it comes to economic upliftment, when it comes to better health conditions, we have a lot of schemes which are currently underway and which are covering all of these populations. But beyond that, what are the other challenges that the tribal communities in our country face, the concerns that still persist among them, and how do we, I wouldn't say include, because Professor Chaudhury just said that, it's including them into mainstream is something that we'll have to perhaps relook at. But for their betterment, to ensure that they also reap the benefits of development, of progress, just as all the other communities do.
Well, I think the benefit of development like education or technology should reach them.
Yes.
But at the same time, they should not be turned into second-class citizens. They are first-class citizens. They should remain first-class citizens. So their confidence, their empowerment, and their autonomy and their self-respect must be protected at all costs. And this applies to all the tribal communities, including the Sentinelies. The Sentinelies don't want to contact outsiders. Let us respect their choice. And, like what we did with the Jarawas, or those we know that they are called actually Angs. What we did with Jarawas, now the ill effects of their forceful contact that we made them are appearing. They are becoming addicted to tobacco, alcohol, and all those kind of vices that we have. So we have to be very careful with these communities, but with others, we should give them all, all facilities, all benefits that they want, but not as second-class citizens. They should be treated as first-class citizens. They should have their dignity. They should have their empowerment. They should love their culture. We should promote their culture. We should promote their language, and let them be proud citizens of this country, equal citizens of this country, rather than second-class citizens.
Certainly, Professor Joshi. So that having been said, I'll have to wind up the program. Time is running out. I would like to thank all 3 of you for joining us on this edition of Perspective today and sharing your thoughts with us and our viewers. Absolute pleasure to hear all 3 of you today on this very, very important subject. So that's it from us, viewers, on this edition of Perspective. I'll see you same time tomorrow now with another topic and a different set of panelists. Until then, take care of yourselves and keep watching Sansad TV.
पुलिस सुधार को